Oh, we sure do love a good movie. But you know what South Africans also love? Is a good steak. And you really can't beat a nice aromatic marinade to take the juicy steak to a whole other level. Today we're adding an unexpected twist with a delicious Nespresso coffee marinade that will pack a flavor punch. To me, I've never heard of this. Normally with my steaks, and especially with such a good piece of meat, salt, pepper, bit of lemon, and Bob's your uncle.
Well,
but coffee? Hello.
I know, girl. It adds a very nice touch of flavor there, and maybe you should actually get started on it because I'm going to need it for the marinade. But like you said, girl, any good steak starts with a little bit of salt and pepper. But before I go there, I want to drizzle a bit of oil on it because you want to make sure that the salt and pepper can actually adhere to that piece of meat that you're going to be using here. So I just want to brush each side of it with some oil.
You can do that. So we are going to be using the Nespresso Vienna Lenizio Lungo, which I absolutely love. And I just think that it's going to be paired so beautifully with the flavors you have there. Obviously, this one is very smooth, it is silky, and it is balanced. And it comes from South American Arabica. So if you wanted to know what the taste profile is like, it is quite a mild body, quite a bit of bitterness, a medium roast, and very slight acidity. So again, complementing the beautiful flavors you're coming there. I know with a piece of meat, one thing G has taught me is that it is so important that the meat rests, okay?
Very important.
Right?
And also very important that if you're making such kind of meat that has a nice juicy layer of fat, start fat side down first. Make sure you get that fat rendered, and then once you've done that, you can actually go into the other sides of your meat. I think it's good enough to leave it alone.
To just pan on its own. I was so tempted to drink this right now, but I know not. This is going to be the first one, so the first lungo going in for our marinade, and then I'm going to pop in another capsule over here.
So while you're doing that, then I think I'm going to let this baby fall over so that we can get started on the marinade, because in essence, what we want here, Jamie, is that the residual heat from the coffee is going to dissolve everything else that we're putting in here. And into this marinade, we've got some Worcestershire, guys.
Worcestershire. It is. What it is.
That person, that one.
Worcestershire.
Inside. We're going with a bit of dark brown sugar. Some people say treacle sugar. It's completely up to you. You can use that as well because it's going to give a nice caramel flavor.
I was going to say, is that not going to burn it? But I'm understanding that it will give it that nice layer of just sweetness.
Correct. So that's why I've also started with the sear first, because what I want to do is I don't want to overly baste this with too much of the flavor. I just want to make sure that it's a touch of flavor from the sweetness, from the savouriness, and all that nice mellow flavor from the coffee. I think that's what's going to bind it together.
Can I ask you a very silly question? What would happen if I actually let this meat rest in it overnight and actually let it marinate for about 24 hours? Would it still have the same effect, or would you prefer your method where you say just brush it on lightly after you have seared the steak?
As in you marinated before?
Beforehand. So if I to do the entire marinade, let that meat sink in for about 24 hours, would you suggest that as well?
You could do that. The only thing I would suggest though is to leave out things like the salt, because they're going to dry out your piece of meat. So leave out the salt, leave out anything that dries your piece of meat, and then you can add all the other flavors, like you'd add your thyme, you can add your coffee, the sugars, the vinegars, and all of that. I suggest not to leave it for too long because you don't want your piece to be dry. But those flavors would actually be so much more intense. So the coffee, the addition of the coffee there would make a huge difference. So now that
that's why I ask you these things, because my personal chef right at my fingertips.
So as you can see, Jamie, I've made sure to brush the one side, and before I flip over to the other side, I'm going to brush it with our seasoning. And what this is going to do is, you mentioned that caramelization. That's what it's going to help with now, because it's going to get those beautiful grill marks. And then the flavors are just going to go to another level. And I know we're not having this on its own,
I was just
right?
going to say, what is a great steak without some sides? So I'm going to pop this into our air fryer. So we have some beautiful chips, and this is going to go in right over there. It's already frozen.
This looks like restaurant grade steak. I mean, if I've never done anything for you, my friend, I'd like to think I've given you an amazing steak, Njie, you know?
Here we go. And it's on, just like that.
There you go. And then the juices, as it cooks down, because of the sugar, the balsamic vinegar, it's going to reduce, and it's also going to thicken, creating a nice, beautiful glaze around that steak. If you don't have time, what you can then do is, once your steak is now cooked, depending on whether you want it medium, medium well, all of that, you can put it in the oven and let it cook to that desired texture. But I like to leave it and cook it on the pan and let it do its thing, you know? And I don't want to get all fancy and do those. I'm just going to leave it simple. We want the steak simple, easy, delicious.
Love that. I also didn't get to see the steps where you used your spices. So what did you have there? I know you had salt and pepper, which is my basic.
I also added a bit of
me.
garlic. I added some thyme. I, in essence, just removed some of the leaves from the thyme. Added some mustard powder, and then our
that's what I didn't get.
Worcestershire sauce and some balsamic, and that also just helps bind the flavors together.
And the garlic. Don't forget the garlic.
The garlic is in there.
Garlic is the girl that you think she is. This is beautiful. Beautiful for just, you know, if you want to be fancy, if you want to be schmancy, and you want to turn things up a notch. And look at that here. Just look at the griddle marks on that beautiful piece of meat. I know you want to know. I know you want to know, so I'm going to tell you. ExpressoShow.com is where you can find your hands on that recipe. We use, of course, our beautiful Nespresso capsule, and you can too. Spice things up a bit, live a little bit, marinate that steak. It doesn't have to be boring. You don't have to be like me, just with your basics. Take it up a level. And again, you can find that at ExpressoShow.com. Thank you, Chef Jumi. That looks beautiful. I'm going to take that for me.